Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Dunedin City Council. Welcome to councillors, to staff, to the media and to the public. Our opening prayer today will be led by LT Sannyasi from the Baha'i community. Welcome.
O divine providence, this assemblage is composed of thy friends who are attracted to thy beauty and are set ablaze by the fire of thy love. Turn these souls into heavenly angels, resuscitate them through the breath of thy Holy Spirit, grant them eloquent tongues and resolute hearts, bestow upon them heavenly power and merciful susceptibilities. Cause them to become the promulgators of the oneness of mankind, and cause the cause of love and concord in the world of humanity, so that the perilous darkness of ignorant prejudice may vanish through the light of the Sun of Truth. This dreary world may become illumined. This material realm may absorb the rays of the world of spirit. These different colors may merge into one color, and the melody of praise may rise to the kingdom of thy sanctity. Verily, thou art the omnipotent and the almighty. Abdul-Baha.
Now, councillors, we'll move on to public forum. And can I invite Rory McCarthy to address us on declaring a climate emergency. Welcome. Just up here.
Dear members of Dunedin Council, I am here today to implore you to table a motion to declare a climate emergency. I am here today because perhaps for the first time in history, we are being asked to look far beyond our own generation. I could talk to you about the details of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPBES report on biodiversity and ecological systems, and how our rapidly warming climate is going to cause the extinction of over 1 million species. A recent report on New Zealand's own biodiversity found an average population decrease of 60%. Our rivers and lakes are over-polluted through farming, and our cities' water systems are in need of attention too. I fear these arguments have been made and they have not swayed you already. The truth is, most of these reports are talking about a best case scenario and have already been critiqued about the effects of not taking into consideration the effects of rapidly thawing permafrost, the effect of which could have a cataclysmic effect. So instead, I am here to try and encourage you to do what makes us human, to reason. The denial of the climate crisis as it stands without large-scale action is unacceptable. This isn't a game or a statistic, this is our very lives and the future of our children. We have allowed the dominance and arrogance of Western philosophy to guide many of our decisions regarding nature, and looked only to the bottom line rather than looking at the environmental impacts, the impacts on the future generations, and as well to see whether or not these things actually do improve the lives of those around them. It is not unfair to blame colonialistic capitalism for our current situation. If we took into consideration the environmental impact of our governmental decisions on a local, regional, or national level, we would be running massive deficits. At some point, we're going to have to face the reality that we are going to need to make wide-scale lifestyle changes, active rewilding, and massive spending in order to fix our broken ecosystems. But this must be done in such a way that it does not cause regressive harm. There will be arguments made that why should we do anything? We're such a small nation. But this logic is inherently faulty. What we are living in is a tragedy of the commons, and if we all keep acting in our own self-interest, humanity will go extinct. It is only through grassroots, local, regional, and national action that we can force larger governments to act. New Zealand was once the leader of the nuclear-free movement, and now we are being called upon again to lead, this time for our 100% pure, clean, green image. I implore you on behalf of the people of Dunedin to acknowledge scientists' warnings that urgent action is required between the years 2018 to 2020. Use full disclosure of government and private sector organizations for their informations and risks relevant to increased global warming, including forest fires, flooding, sea level rise, drought, biodiversity loss, and species extinction. I would call on you also to call on other councils and district councils to also adopt this climate emergency and take all practical steps to reduce fossil fuel use by 2025 and eliminate it completely by 2030. Call it, and also lobby political parties and try and get them to adopt this declaration as well. I would also ask on behalf of Extinction Rebellion that a citizens' assembly be established so that a wider range, for wider consultation, as all members of society should be represented in these decisions that will affect everyone. Please stop playing Russian roulette with our futures. Act now.
Rory, to take questions? Yep. Sure. Questions, councillors? Anyone have a question? Councillor Vanders.
Thank you for coming along, Rory, and thank you also for your obviously sincere speech. I've also spoken with a number of your supporters out on the street, and they all agree that we need urgent action, local action, and large-scale action, as you highlighted now. What is less obvious is what real practical actions can be done. My question is, apart from stopping using diesel in buses, which has been suggested, an ORC issue, the only actual action that I could glean in the brief time that I was down there was stopping burning sewage. Do you agree that that is something that the DCC should be doing, and what other specific actions would you like us as a City Council to do?
Okay, so the City Council is responsible mainly for the patterns of the citizens that live in the city. So we have you guys can encourage public education programs. So for practical solutions, there are a number of suggestions out there. The reason that I say to table a motion is because the way that we go about declaring a climate emergency will require thinking about these issues. Some of the easy things are to drive less, which is something that we can educate the public on. Carpool, these are like simple wins. Add solar panels to your roofs. There are like plenty of programs out there that are available now. All the solutions to solve the climate crisis currently exist, but we lack the political will to actually change them.
Further questions, councillors? No more? Oh, Councillor O'Malley.
Thanks, Rory. I think in your answer then, one of the issues that you'll see is central government, local government and individual actions. So are you asking us to use whatever tools we have to influence that argument as much as possible? Because some of the stuff is outside our control, but are you saying that's not a reason not to at least make a statement as to where we stand, so that at least that statement sits there, if nothing, and then to obviously do what we can inside our own jurisdiction control?
So making the statement is, like, sure, it's great to say it's a climate emergency. Unless that's actually backed by a specific plan of action, I don't think it's a good idea. The reason that I say to lobby other parts of government is because I've written letters to pretty much every MP that I can imagine. I emailed you with some incorrect information regarding Australia, but I apologize for that. I was in a rush. Yeah, I guess focusing on local solutions would be the main thing that I'd want us to do. Like, what can we do to make our cities more livable? What can we do to reduce pollution in our cities? Like, what incentives can we provide for people to improve their lives and reduce their fossil fuel use? That would be what I would get the local councils to focus on.
Questions? Rory, thank you for your submission. Appreciate it. Now, could I invite Diane Yeldon to address us? Diane wants to talk about public engagement. Welcome, Diane.
Your Worship, thank you, councillors, for this opportunity to speak. I know I'm here an awful lot. The first thing I want to talk about is public engagement, and I'm going to have to talk quick because I've got a lot to go through. For climate change adaptation, it has to be the local council which provides leadership. Okay, I'm not going to look at notes. Standing orders allow you to suspend standing orders for a particular reason, and other councils at the end of public forum, by that somebody moves to suspend standing orders so you can discuss the agenda, the public forum speakers. Now, you can't deliberate because you can't make decisions without advertising that you're going to make decisions, because that's a transparency provision. But you can determine action points, and you can do that at the end of public forum, and other councils do this. At the moment, when I do a public forum submission to you, there's a deafening silence afterwards. There's nothing happens. And I mean, I understand council processes, but a lot of people are unfamiliar with the public forum process. Their feeling is that it doesn't do anything. You know, nothing happens. I'm sure that, I mean, I know some of you do suggest that the issue moves on, but if you could suspend standing, or if you could agree to suspend standing orders at the end of public forum and just briefly say, okay, that would go to this committee and that would go to that, and even maybe send a person a letter to let them know it's happening. So that's the first thing. Now, there's another thing that's cropped up, is the agenda item, and I think it's 15, and it's about e-scooters. Now, you know there's been a controversy about a revocation of a motion, and revoking motions, resolutions of the council is very important, because you're like a legal body, and your resolutions are sort of like effective law, and the public need to know what you've decided, because it has legal force. Now, the staff recommendation about the e-scooter safety trial is arguably and debatably a reversal of your resolution to look into e-scooter safety. Just because it says safety trial, what this resolution, this recommendation, if you make a resolution, what it's going to do is it's going to say e-scooters can be on the central city from Rattray Street to Bank Street, right through the central city for a year. And just because it says safety trial, don't be confused by the words, because there's no enforcement planned, intended, or possibly legally available. So if you just please take that on board, and if you want to just look at whether that staff recommendation is actually a reversal of the intention in your earlier resolution, at least defer the agenda item. Okay, so the next thing I have got to suggest is fairly controversial. You know, many councils are declaring a climate change emergency, and it's very difficult to know what to do. Now, I made a submission earlier, and I suggested 3 things: ethical travel, ethical consuming, okay, so what people buy, and the last one was carbon soil capture. Those 3 things are really, really probably enough to turn climate change around. The amount of carbon can be captured in soil. There's a website that I gave you a reference to that can take enough carbon out of the atmosphere that we could continue burning fossil fuels until we got transitional technology. So those are 3 things that would work. And the other thing I've found out more recently is that you all know that forests sequester carbon, and you also know we've got a climate change carbon credits. Carbon credits are a new way of making money. So if the council took a climate change adaptation program to sequester carbon, this is not a necessarily cost. It might be a benefit. You might be able to earn money out of it. And the more research is blue-green carbon sequestration. It's a mouthful, but when you get a wetland or any interface between water and land, you can get massive carbon sink effect. And this can be in a coastal wetland as well as in an estuary and a river. And that's a really, that could earn more carbon credits than a forest. And I don't have local knowledge because I've only been here about 20 years, so I didn't grow up here, but I've heard that South Dunedin coastal area had tidal wetlands. So, okay, I'm just about finished, Mayor Carlo. I don't know what the time is. Some councils give people a warning at 4 minutes. Oh, thank you. Well, what happens to it? Does it just go out?
It explodes.
Say that? Okay, I'll watch out.
No,
okay,
it just goes to red.
The last thing is you've got the money for the Provincial Growth Fund, and I understand it has to be, well, my understanding is it has to be for economic development. But climate change emergency means maybe we have to reevaluate our plans. So when this was consulted on, it was done very fast and budgeted very quickly, very short consultation, and what people were given was yes or no. Now, I would like an either or, and the or I'm thinking about is coastal erosion protection for the South Dunedin area with innovation. People are working flat out on new technologies to beat climate change. And one of them, as I said, is blue-green carbon sinks, okay? And that area is tidal. So planting there to sequester carbon in a salt marsh, it's got huge benefits. It's got environmental benefits, it's got food benefits, it's got tourist benefits, wildlife will come back. And I think Tomahawk Lagoon, again, I haven't got local knowledge, but I think that's silted and that could be a wet. The last thing is great massive big concrete blocks. What happens? Rattles them all and makes them all align, so they ramp, and then the waves go over the top. Now there's a technology where the concrete blocks have bits sticking out, so when they're all rattled by the waves, they interlock. And these have been trialled and they're actually working well. We could manufacture them. I know this sounds, I saw a cartoon recently. This cartoon went like this. I know we're all going to die from climate change, but in the meantime, we've got wonderful business opportunities. I'm afraid it's true. There are business opportunities. People would want to buy this technology, and we're a city with marine biology expertise, construction expertise. We've got the biggest problem. We've got the biggest problem facing us with South Dunedin. But we could trial and solve that problem with our expertise and our technology, and we could basically lead New Zealand in the world. So what I'm asking you to do is at least please consider this, whether you would ask the people here about that money. Now, I don't actually know the details of that money, Provincial Growth Fund. It all happened so fast. I follow council, okay, and it happened real fast. Please look into whether there's you could present the people here with an alternative, a choice. Say, could we use the harbour side? We modify the harbour side, maybe just develop the land. I'm not that sure about the bridge, okay? I don't know about that. But just give people a choice and make one of those choices a coastal erosion protection scheme as innovative as possible.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Lord.
Yep, sorry. Just one thing in terms of you were talking about sequestering carbon, I just thought, did you know, posing it like a question, did you know that this past year City Forest has planted an additional 250 hectares of farmland into forestry?
Councillor, look.
No, well, I'm just, yeah, well, you can.
You're actually telling me that, you're not asking me a question, really.
You can get that.
So you're promoting City Forests.
Well,
I'm basically saying that there's better than forests. Okay, there's better options than forests.
Yeah, no, but what I was going to just say, if you let me finish, was there was 250 hectares, or 275 hectares planted this year, and probably the same will go in this winter. And that's new forest, which will sequester all the diesel trucks, everything that's used on City Forest. That's 11 to 15 years.
Done.
So we are making a good progress.
Any other questions? There are none. Diane, thank you. Now, can I invite Daphne Lee to address us on Fulden Mar? Welcome, Daphne. And I understand you have a presentation that I think we've got. Yeah.
Your Worship, can I just move, because we're definitely going to go over the half hour that we do that now rather than interrupting.
Sure.
Dr. Lee?
So you'll move that we extend public forum. Second to Councillor Gary. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
Thank you for the invitation to come and speak to you. I'm a paleontologist at the University of Otago, and I have been working at Folden Mar, which is the single most important fossil site in New Zealand since 2003, with a very large group of scientific researchers from New Zealand, from overseas, and a lot of students, including several PhD and master's students. Next, please. Next. Oh, I see, sorry. So anyway, while we're waiting, I thought I would bring you some pictures to show you what we have found there, on the grounds that pictures, one picture is worth 1,000 words. So also, I'm a lecturer. I'm used to speaking for 50 minutes, not 5. So I hope I'm going to be allowed to, go over a little bit. What's that? We're working on it. Okay, so can I keep on speaking then? Is that all right?
Far away.
Yes. Okay, right. So this has not only got the most important fossil record in New Zealand and in the Southern Hemisphere, and because it's New Zealand internationally, it has the most important climate record anywhere in the world for a time when the planet was warmer than it is at the moment. So there are many, many reasons to save Folden Mar for scientific and educational research. Now, some of you, can we have the lights down? Is that possible? So people can see on the screen. Anyway, you will see that there is a circular structure in the middle. You can see a bowl if you know what you're looking for below Moonlight Road, and in the middle of it there is a white quarry, which is the diatomite quarry that's been there for about 25 years, I think. Okay, next please. That's a closer up view of the quarry and of the homestead of the family whose land surrounds the 42 hectares owned by the mining company, who are based in Malaysia and Australia. This is what is at the centre of an overseas investment office application. The mining company want to buy the farm out to greatly increase the size of the mine. Next, please. Okay, so what do you see if you go there? This is part of the quarry as it was. My colleague, John Lindquist, has a chainsaw in his hand and not enough safety gear. He is cutting down a clean face of the diatomite. And on the right-hand side, you can see those thin parallel lines. They are actually in pairs, about 1 millimetre thick, and there are 120,000 years of annual layers preserved in this site. At the top, you'll see the material is white. When it's a cut face, it looks black, and that's part of what we're going to talk about. Next, please. Okay, what is a Mar Lake and why is this so important? This is the only one of its kind in New Zealand. It started off with a violent volcanic eruption, formed a crater which was about 1 kilometre across, at least 200, probably 300 metres deep, with a raised rim of volcanic debris, which meant the lake was a closed system. In it, organic sediments, in this case diatomite, are formed, and this resulted in absolutely amazing, totally globally significant preservation of plants and animals at the anoxic lake bed. Next. So up close a bit more, and unfortunately, right on the left-hand side is the core. We had a very large grant from the Royal Society of New Zealand, the Marsden grant, to drill through this to prove that it was a Mar, and also to see what was down there. In 2009, we drilled for 183 metres. We have the core in a refrigerated container at the university. We showed that there was 120 metres of diatomite on top of 63 metres of volcanic debris. We dated the volcanic rocks at 23 million years. That's what the diatoms look like. They have silica skeletons, very bad to breathe in. Next one. This is a very quick look at some of the extraordinary preservation of the plants to start with. Leaves, as you find them on the top, as prepared in the bottom, and I have some here. Next, please. This is what the cellular structure of the cuticle looks like. It is absolutely amazing. My colleagues in the Northern Hemisphere seeing these fossils are green with envy. Next, please. Some fossils you would recognise, supplejack, next please. And very importantly, orchids. Orchid leaves, there are 20,000 living orchids in the world today. There are 5 fossils and 2 of them come from Folden Mar. Next please. This is the diagram that anybody in the world who works on orchids and their fossil history has to refer to. The 2 fossils from Folden Mar are the red dots at the top. From now till the end of time, anybody who writes on the history of orchids mentions Folden Mar. Next, please. There are many flowers, and you can see some of them there with their kind of modern counterparts. Many of them have pollen preserved, which is almost unheard of. Next, please. That's a small one, extinct in New Zealand, still living in Australia. Tiny flowers, beautiful big leaves. Next, please. Most of the leaves are from Lauraceae, related to Tawa. Some still living in New Zealand, some extinct. Next, please. So, I could talk about leaves for an hour, but let's have a quick look at what else you find there. There are insects. When we started our research in 2003, there were 7 fossil insects known from the whole fossil record of New Zealand, all, 400 million years of it. Since then, my research team alone has found 540, all different insects. 266 of them come from Folden Mar. And we are scratching around in that little pit at the top of the, in that picture. So here are some pictures of some of them, scale insects and flatbugs. Next, please. There are termites. Next, please. There are beetles of many kinds, some of them with colour preserved. See the one in the middle, structural colour. Again, the only place in New Zealand that you find this. Next, please. There are flies of many kinds. The picture at the bottom shows eyes. The preservation here is so extraordinary that eyes and skin and soft parts are preserved. Next, please. There are lots of ants, wasps and bees. New Zealand has 11 species of ants today. At the little tiny bit of Folden Mar we have so far explored, we have the same number of ants. It may not seem important to you, but to the scientific community, this is absolutely essential knowledge. Next, please. So, 266 insects so far, 4 spiders, 9 orders, 21 families. Please keep going. Next, please. Okay, there are also fish, and I found this one, so I'm particularly proud of it. This is at Folden Mar, the oldest fossils of the Southern Hemisphere family Galaxidae, whitebait, are found, and you can see the preservation. That's one fish. I split a block of diatomite, and I've got some there to show you, and it fell in 2 with half of the fish on each a part of the rock. This is again extraordinary. There are very few places in the world where you can find fossils preserved like this. Next, please. This is my colleague from Australia's reconstruction, factual. I sent her a list of all the fossils we had, and she's recreated it for us. So, Middlemarch today is a green grassy paddock. Folden Mar is a green grassy paddock or 2, surrounded by very dry schist, but 23 million years ago, it was surrounded by subtropical rainforest, which has given us a record of climate which is unparalleled. Next, please. Okay, so a couple of things to comment here. This is by any count the most important fossil site in New Zealand. It preserves an entire subtropical rainforest ecosystem and the lake ecosystem. Because it was a closed system, every plant or animal that was blown or fell into the lake sank to the bottom and was preserved. So layer by layer, for 120,000 years, we can study the climate changes, the changes in the forest, and so on. We already know of hundreds of new species. We've described about 50 so far. There are almost certainly thousands and thousands still to discover. It also preserves the most detailed Miocene climate record in the world. There is nowhere else on the planet where you can get a year-by-year study of carbon dioxide levels, maximum and minimum temperatures, looking at isotopes for precipitation, and so on. So if we are going to understand what's going to happen to the world in the future, we have to look back into the past, and Folden Mar is the best place on the planet to do this, and I am not exaggerating. So I've said in the Southern Hemisphere, my colleagues emailed me and said, say globally. So it provides the only evidence we will ever have for New Zealand in a warmer world. And back to biodiversity, it's the key to our present biodiversity, and it's just essential to save it. We do not know what is there yet. If it is mined, it will be lost forever. Next, please. Now, I just want to make a very quick comment about black versus white diatomite. This is my research, some of my research group, and this is me with students in the field, having a wonderful time, I may say. The white diatomite is the dried out black diatomite. Within a week or a month, or maybe a few months of being exposed to the air, the black diatomite, which is 80% water, turns white and disintegrates. And I've got an example there that was collected 3 months ago, and it's already disintegrating. The fossils I have, if you want to come and touch them, I've covered with PVA because they will disintegrate as well. So the mining company is talking about the value of black diatomite. It is white diatomite with water and a little bit of leaf material in it. Diatomite, white diatomite, the ordinary kind, is globally abundant. It has very little value, and I am not sure, no, sorry, I better not express my opinions. I'm telling you the facts at the moment. So there are huge deposits of white diatomite in other parts of the world which can be mined very, very cheaply. As far as I know, there is no nutritive value in diatomite at all. It is silica. It will destroy your teeth. It will give you a tummy ache, and it will give you silicosis if you breathe it in. Next, please. This is how Folden Mar looks today. If mining goes ahead, what will happen? So that's as it is today. Next, please. This is what the mining company plan to do. They want to remove 500,000 tonnes of diatomite a year, every year for 27 years. And at the end of that time, after all the health and safety issues and whatever have been dealt with, and if there is still a market for their product and they don't leave a huge mess behind, as could happen. Next, please. We will have a very pretty blue lake. It will be nice, you know, little lake to canoe on, but there will be no possibility of doing any more science ever in the history of scientific research. So next, please. So I propose, and this is not my proposal formally, but the Geoscience Society considers that this should be regarded as an outstanding natural feature and preserved in perpetuity for scientific and educational purposes. It would also be an amazing tourist place, I can assure you. I think what the Reserves Act 1977 said, it provides for the preservation and management for the benefit and enjoyment of the public areas of New Zealand, such as Folden Mar, possessing natural, yes, scenic, definitely, geological, absolutely, scientific, globally significant, educational, amazing, community, definitely, and all other special features of value. The Geopreservation Inventory, begun by the Geoscience Society in 1983, lists nearly 2,500 sites in New Zealand. 200 of them have an A, which is internationally significant rating. Folden Mar has an A ranking, and it has a little bit afterwards that said vulnerable to total destruction. Next, please. Just to say about the financial side of this, I know we can't say we will make billions of dollars of profit out of this, but the Royal Society of New Zealand and the University of Otago have already provided well over $2 million to do research here, firstly with 2 Marsden grants, specifically on Folden Mar, and then with other ones to carry on the research. We have an international team of many more than 30 researchers. I got to 30 and stopped counting. Hundreds of students. I've taken hundreds, possibly 1,000 or more people there, and I would think every single one of them would agree with me that this is such an important site that it must be preserved in perpetuity. That may be the last one, is it? Can you? Oh, sorry, I just want to acknowledge the people who actually do most of the work. I organise them all and they do it. So there's a few of the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. I'm going to kick off questions myself with a question. We know that Folden Mar has been mined in the past, as you said, for the 5 or 6 or so years, maybe more, and we know that there's been scientific research done through that time. So to what extent is commercial exploitation compatible with optimal scientific research on the site?
Not at all. I have thought about this long and hard for the last 5 years or so. When the previous mining company that went bankrupt were there, they were mining on a very small scale, like a few truckloads a year, and they were using the product in New Zealand, and they worked in with us because their managing director was a geologist. And that actually worked quite well. It was a win-win. And of course, when we drilled it, we showed them how extensive the deposit was and so on. So we did all the work for them, basically. However, things have changed completely. I had no conception that anybody would want to mine the entire deposit. That had never crossed my mind until I read that leaked report in the ODT in April. And I must say, I was absolutely horrified, more than horrified, and so were my colleagues in New Zealand and elsewhere. And I have been inundated, is probably the right word, with emails and phone calls and so on by people from all over the place, scientists and others, saying, don't let this happen. Now, in terms of being able to work in with this mining company, the answer is no, it is not possible. For the climate record to be preserved in perpetuity, we have to keep the full section through the deepest middle part of the deposit. We know where it is because we did the work that showed where it was, and then we drilled there. My colleagues say that after 10 years, the core, which is in refrigeration, is already starting to, gradually disintegrate. Future work, and there's a whole lot of papers coming out in international journals as I speak, probably, in fact, definitely will want to go back and do new cores because there will be new techniques of studying what, the climate record. As far as the fossils are concerned, every fossil probably requires hours to collect, and days to prepare, and then weeks and months to write the scientific papers on them. The fossils are mostly small and fragile. There is no way that a digger or whatever, digger operator, with all the best will in the world, could stop and say, wow, I found a whole bed with thousands of fish preserved on it, or hundreds of flowers of the same plant, or 500 new different insects. It is just not possible. And they've said they can. I do not believe it.
Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thanks for your presentation. Have you presented this material to the Overseas Investment Office?
I have sent them information, and since that leaked report in the ODT, the Geoscience Society is about to send a revised submission to the Overseas Investment Commission. They called me in about a year ago and asked me to speak to them, but at that stage I had no idea what was going on under the table or behind the scenes or whatever, and so I answered their questions, but I probably wasn't as proactive as I should have been because I didn't actually see what was coming. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And should we receive in due course any resource consents, if there is an approval to purchase, the same material would be available for that extension?
Oh, of course. We have published, I think, somewhere between 35 and 40 scientific papers so far. They're all available out in the public arena. I've given dozens and dozens, if not I've given dozens of talks. I have a list of 80 conference presentations on Fold and Mar that we've given around the world. So there's a lot of information out there. Perhaps, now, can I just say, we probably haven't been as upfront with it as we might have been, partly because at any point the mining company could have stopped our access to the land. And so with the first mining company that I dealt with, and there was a previous one in the 1950s that also went broke, I think, with the earlier one that wasn't a problem, but I had the distinct feeling that at any point, if we said anything that the mining company did not approve of, they would say, oh, well, that's very nice, Professor Lee, I'm sorry, but the gate is going to be locked and you cannot take your students or colleagues there again. So you see what I mean? We were actually in a very awkward situation. That has changed when all this other stuff has come out in the open. Okay?
Councillor Lord.
Yeah, look, thank you for your presentation. I just had a couple of questions. The first one I wanted to if you could just repeat, what was the 65 metres of level below the diatomite?
It's excuse me, volcanic debris. What I should have bought you was a movie. So this is basalt magma, like we have around Dunedin, rising up a volcanic vent, like a fault line or something, hitting water and exploding. There is a violent explosion, like seriously violent. You wouldn't want to be anywhere around. And then it leaves, think of a kilometre like this, a kilometre wide hole shaped a bit like this. Most of the material from the eruption falls back down. So the bottom 63 metres is broken schist and volcanic debris. Okay? When it all, and then the other half of it or whatever went round the edge of the lake, the little lake. So there was no water initially, but within a few weeks or months it would fill with water, and one of my PhD students has got a beautiful series of reconstructions from the drill core of how this happened. So it would become a lake within a very short time, and because it's this beautiful little closed system, everything that lives in and around the lake is preserved in this amazing detail. And as I say, this is extraordinary.
Any dust or anything like that that blew onto the lake all just sunk down?
There was a little bit of dust. There's 5% of the sediment. Between 2 and 5% is actually wind-blown dust that flew over the rainforest that developed around it and into the lake. But everything else is organic. The diatoms, the little silica plants were living on the surface. Every year they bloomed and then sank to the bottom and made this 1 millimetre thick blanket across the bottom. Next year, and then if a fish died, then it would lie on the bottom, and then the next year's diatoms would cover it up. Does that make sense? It's a wee bit hard to explain.
So eventually, does this just fill right up to the top?
Absolutely.
Where eventually water just finds a way out? Any rainwater?
That would happen eventually. I've been at Mars like this in Germany, where you can walk across the spongy top and know that there's 100 metres of oil shale below you, and it's actually spongy swamp on top. And then eventually, that will dry out completely and so on. But the basin stays wet, which is why those fossils are pickled. Effectively, they've been in a wet environment for 23 million years with no decay going on, an anoxic environment. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Professor Lee.
Who was there?
Thank you, Professor Lee, and thank you for so much information. I think we're all learning as we go and being educated. I have 2 points of clarification. One of them was this concept that's been put forward by, I believe, the mining company of separating out a percentage of the area and for fossil extraction and that being all okay. What I hear from you is absolutely that will not work. It has to be everything or nothing. Is that?
I think so. We would like scientific research to carry on in tandem with educational education for, let's say, several hundred years into the future. At Messelmar, where I've been, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is the Northern Hemisphere equivalent of Folden Mar. For the past 50 years, they've had students there digging, doing research. They have a museum on the spot. They have visitors come. I've been several times and had a guided tour around and so on. And you can collect fossils. And one of the things about this, you can go and collect a fossil for yourself if you're a child or a grandparent like I am, and know that you're holding a 23 million year old leaf or fish or whatever in your hand. There are not many places in the world you can do that. And just back to the climate change thing, the best record is obviously in the middle, which is the deepest part of this, basin. And so for the mining company to offer 5 hectares, I think they said, out of the 80 hectares, out on the east, kind of near the edge, I mean, it is just totally ridiculous from a scientific point of view. It's just not possible.
Thank you for that clarity. And my second question was around the climate record, because what I heard you say was this is globally extremely significant. So would you see the city, because it's within city boundaries, showing leadership in terms of climate change? It would be an amazing opportunity. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely wonderful win-win. We've got a 120,000 year record of a warmer climate back then when ice, there was only a moderate amount of ice in Antarctica, but it was fluctuating. And we still don't know how much ice there was, but that's what one of my she was my student. She's now, a lecturer at another university in the UK. And there's another one at New York at the Climate Laboratory at Lamont Doherty. They are working on the core. I mean, we've been working on the site since 2003, on the core only since 2009. This is science in its infancy, and yet we've still published many papers in the leading international journals on this. And many more are to come. But yeah, that would be a really interesting thing to do.
Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Worship. I'm really wanting everyone, since Professor Lee's brought them along, to have a look at those. Can we adjourn so we can do that, or pass them around?
I can pass them around. Do you want me to pass them around? There's 1 leaf in acetate, which is safe for handling.
Councillor Benson-Pope, would you grab those and just...
Yeah. Can I just warn you, be careful with the box of diatomite. It's already... It's gone from black to nearly white, and it's falling apart. Don't get it on your hands. These are little sharp diatoms. They will... if you're wearing anything dark, you will have a smudge on them. It's not dangerous in this quantity, but just be cautious.
Councillor, you got another question, Councillor Wilson?
Turning this on the head, and we were invited at a previous meeting to consider the geopark concept for this area. You've talked about how many scientists are involved and interested in this worldwide. As a learning institution, can you see this being a centre of... how many lecturers or people in the geology field would be interested in this?
Many.
Okay.
Some of my students who are now overseas, if there was an opportunity to do this, would come back and run it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just expand a bit? I think this would be a fantastic end to the geopark, which the Whitestone Geopark comes down to, I think it's Nenthorne, does anybody know? Which is only about 15k up the road. So if it was extended to a publicly owned Folden Mars site. Now, can I say, the farm does not need to be, for what I would like to see happening, the farm should stay as a farm, and access and so on should be, as it is at the moment. But the area that the mining company own, if it was purchased by the government or some benefactor or whatever for scientific and educational research, could just be managed, with just the way Messel is. I mean, I know how Messel operates, and it's very successful. People might even pay money to come. I don't know about that.
Thank you.
I would pay $10 to go and collect a fossil 23 million years old, but...
Councillor Laufiso.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Professor Lee, for your presentation and for your ongoing work. I'm just wanting to know, please, if the people in the community that are activating against this, these further plans, are they making meetings for the local community so that you can come and speak to them? Are you talking to other leaders in other territorial authorities such as Clutha?
Yes. Yes, I'm speaking in Middlemarch on the 15th of May. I'm speaking in Balclutha on the 17th of May. Was going to be speaking at the university tonight and again tomorrow, but I've actually got a sick family member in Invercargill, which I'm just about on to go down there now. But I'm willing at any time to talk to anyone at all, and obviously there's been media articles and so on. I've also been asked by the University of Otago Press to write a book on this. I've been asked by the International MAR research group to write a chapter for the new book they're putting out. And this, I should say, this is only one part of my research. I actually have another half a dozen sites around Otago and South, and this is only one of them, but obviously at the moment this is the most important.
Councillor O'Malley.
Thanks, Daphne, for your presentation. It was really interesting. And the question I have is, it looks like your dig's not very far down at the moment on the 200 metres, so you're really still just at the top. Is that correct?
Yes and no. We've actually dug in several different places, and I probably didn't explain it because I haven't had time. The beds of diatomite are originally horizontal. They now dip down into the centre of the Mar because of volcanic debris at the bottom for probably several million years, keeps on, consolidating. You can picture it, I hope. And so all the originally flat beds start dipping down. And for any of you who are geologists who know about stratigraphy, if you've got beds that dip like that, you just need to make a transect across them, the way William Smith did in 1820. And you get to different levels. We wouldn't get to the bottom that way, but we would get pretty far down in the sequence.
So my question really is, how far into the time record have you gone so far, and do you expect that as you go further you'll find even more fossils?
Possibly different things. But they're not only different going down, they're different in different patches of the maar. There's one place inside the gate, we call it the gate pit, where most of the flowers come from, and that good fish. Where we are at the moment, we're in probably a deeper part of the maar, and we're getting more leaves, but different kinds of ones. So it's heterogeneous across as well as down. We've probably looked at 20 metres in detail, 120 metres in the core, and there are leaves all the way down, and we have been looking at those.
And just so the other thing that you touched on is that this is particularly unusual because there are so many fossils in this particular diatomite area, as opposed to other places where it's commercially mined. There's not many fossils in it.
No, most of them are marine. In fact, almost all of them are marine. So they have fossils in them, of course, because the diatoms are fossils.
Obviously.
But obviously they don't have a terrestrial biota in them.
And that is really what makes this particularly different.
Important here. And also at Messel. Messel is a terrestrial.
And so
Mars have to form on land. You can't have a maar under the sea. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor van der Vis.
Thank you very much for a lot of the very interesting information that you brought to us. I feel much the wiser already. I mean, you've made the point, obviously, that this is a very valuable in terms of scientific research. What ownership model would you believe would be ideal for the area, given that it is currently in private ownership? And
owned by the Malaysian mining company, yes, I know. That is difficult. And can I say that if I'd known what was happening in 2014, I would have pushed for the Department of Conservation or somebody to buy it. But we didn't know this was happening. We didn't know that there was an application to the OIO. It was all done completely under the table. The first we heard of it was when I tried to get permission to go there again after returning from sabbatical, and there was a different person to get in touch with. So I don't know how many people, maybe the council knew about the change of ownership, but certainly the scientific community had no knowledge of it. So we missed an opportunity to buy it. I think it should be owned by the government in one way or another, probably Department of Conservation, but with maybe a DCC kind of oversight or something like that. I'm not sure. That's not really I'm a scientist, I don't do these things. But the Department of Conservation manages huge numbers of scientifically, hugely important areas, and people are allowed access for scientific research and educational research and so on, and I think that is probably the way to go.
Okay, so you've noted that really, ideally, it should be bought by the government, by the taxpayer, and used as a scientific research area only.
Yes.
Okay. You've also said that there's plenty of globally available diatomite around, most of it not terrestrial, that is cheaply available elsewhere, and you've wondered why it is that they actually want to spend so much money getting what is, in your understanding, a low-value product out of this particular maar. Have I got that correctly?
Am I allowed to express what is just my opinion and
Sure,
not the universities at all? I think they bought a cheap, failed enterprise, which was in receivership, found they had this interesting little spot and thought, we'll find a way to spin some money out of this. And I think they've had some amazing spin doctors. I have seen not a single paper in the peer-reviewed literature, which is what I deal with all the time, to say that there's any animal health or fertiliser benefits from this. I do actually have a chemical analysis of it, and I am pretty sure from the people I've talked to that there is nothing in it that is different from ordinary white diatomite from one of these other places with a few trace elements added to it.
Okay, so you can't see why it is that this company wants to invest so much money in digging an awfully great hole in Middlemarch to transport every 6 minutes a truckload from... You've got no idea why they would want to do that, given that there's plenty other diatomite around the place.
The only thing I can think of is that they've got very large dollar signs in front of their eyes.
Right.
And they have thought that there was an opportunity to make money out of something that they got extremely cheaply. I think it was $600,000 or something like that. May I say that I think the local farmers wanted to buy the land back to return it to the farm it originally belonged to. People who used to own the farm rang me up and said, what can we do to stop this? We are so sorry. We sold that to the mining company in the 1980s or 90s or whatever.
So given that the economics of it doesn't make any sense in terms of an animal feed product or anything else, you don't have any idea of why they would invest so much money and so much effort in trying to get this stuff out.
No, and I've read, but I'm not an economist. I read a very interesting analysis by Rod Oram on Sunday, which some of you may have seen, and that was really enlightening. He had obviously, been looking into the background of some of the claims made, and he found that they were, I'm not sure what his words were, did not stack up. And that would be my personal opinion as far as I know.
Yeah, I read the Rob Oram, and I was also impressed that he came to the same conclusion, that in fact there's absolutely nothing in it in terms of pig feed or in terms of any of the stated things. So my last question is the kicker really, and that is, have you heard or have you understood that the purity of the silica being on land is such that it represents a particularly rare and particularly potentially valuable material for silicon semiconductor manufacture? Have you considered this? Would this make sense for them wanting to do so much with it?
No, absolutely not. And there is a deposit of silica, sand and gravel in Southland, which has been looked at for this very purposes, which is about 2 orders of magnitude better than this. These are little silica animals, nasty to breathe in, very nasty to inhale when they get crushed especially. The deposit in Southland, I know, has been looked at by some of my geological colleagues, and with this very thing in mind. It's pure silica in, it's actually round pebbles already pre-washed and prepared by the rivers that carried them, and huge deposits. I mean, I can't say, but I know about the fossils in the climate record, but that would seem to me to be completely unbelievable.
So both you and Rob Oram basically agree that you can't see what the financial driver for it is.
Can I say again, and this is, am I being recorded here? I'm probably going to be sued by the mining company. I think they have somehow...
This is public, so we have to be careful.
Okay,
please.
well, I have to be careful what I say. This is my opinion again. I think they have managed to lever a lot of money out of somewhere, and that money may be predicated on making some money out of getting this big hole in the ground.
But you don't know how.
I don't know that. That is
Okay.
my opinion, and other people have suggested it to me. In fact, they suggested it to me independently. It was not my thought.
Thank you for being so clear.
Councillor Lord.
Yeah, sorry, there was just one other question. I was just, it's just because I'm interested, but the fossils that you have found, I've got a piece of that stuff at home, and I'm pretty sure that when I broke it, it got a leaf right there staring at me. So how rare, like how many cubic metres, for example, over the years would you have pulled apart carefully and gently? Is it hundreds of cubes or just one or two?
Probably about the size of this, this room, something like that. And already we've found, this unbelievably rich record. But, I mean, we're only looking at a tiny part of the, deposit. Who knows what scientists in the future are going to find, if it's there for them to find.
Councillor Hall.
When it's exposed to the weather, will it dissolve in time?
No. Well, actually, I can't really comment on that. I guess so. It certainly breaks down. At the moment, when it's fresh, it's pristine diatoms, but actually, that's something if I'd thought of it, I could have had a look at some of the weathered material from the surface and see what it looks like after, 50 years on the surface. We've never done that. We've always been interested in the fresh material.
Well, I was just reading on the clay cliffs up in the Marama, how they're dissolving. I
Yes.
wonder if this
yes.
would,
No, they're
wonder
clay.
if this would do the same.
No, this is clay. That's clay.
That's right.
This is silicon.
But I just thought, see, if it exposed to the air and dried out, would it crumble?
Crumble, certainly, yes. You pick up a bit of that and rub it between your fingers. Yes, yes,
So-
absolutely. Yes.
So if they were to leave you with 5 hectares and had a face on it, it would slowly dissolve and disappear.
It wouldn't dissolve exactly, but it would
Yeah.
wash down into the thing. We could do nothing with 5 hectares.
Thank you.
Councillor Steadman.
I had 5 minutes.
No, there's no limit on questions.
Oh, isn't okay.
Is that better? Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Professor Lee. That was it's like being back at school. I just missed something. I may have missed it in line with Councillor Gary. So if you had the most important bit, which is in the middle, which with all the information and the history there, there's no way on the outskirts that this company, with the diatomite there, couldn't coexist or anything like that.
I've thought about it. We've thought about it. We've drawn up models of what we might be able to do if we cut it like a pie down the middle and had a 120-metre face with water on one side. And no, it literally cannot be done. And I work with people who work in mines all the time. It just cannot be done with this material in this particular site. And also to destroy the integrity of this deposit would be, it's as I've said, the most precious scientific site in New Zealand as far as paleontologists are concerned. To destroy half of it for a Malaysian company's profit, I'm not sure that I think that is a good thing to do. I really do not. I've said to people, and this again is my personal opinion, I've been working as a scientist for nearly 40 years, I guess, writing scientific papers, and I've received the Mackay Hammer, which is the highest award that the Geoscience Society gives anybody for my research and my colleagues' research and so on. If this was mined, I would feel that my entire scientific career was compromised, and that is not something that I actually am very happy about it at all.
Councillor Staines.
Thank you, Worship. You mentioned that this material, because it's in a crater, has basically moisture through it.
Yes.
So I assume then if someone tried to cut it like a pie, and therefore the water would come out of the rest of the deposit, and therefore the deposit would be damaged. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The other thing is that there's a lot of pyrite in the deposits, iron sulfide. The water coming out would be slightly acidic and so on. And the lake that was left, I'm not sure, I don't quite know what would happen there. So yes, and that is something that, as far as I know, has not been addressed by anybody. But I've talked about it with my geoscience colleagues, and we agree that that is just not feasible.
The bottom line here is either it's mined and lost, or it's left alone. Because if we go part way, we leave it.
Let me say, preserved with appropriate, scientific excavation. At some I don't know, maybe for the summer months, for X number of months a year or something, under the guidance of a scientific community, like a geoscience committee or something like that. And the community, I think this is a really important community site as well, which I guess not many people knew about until this is all blown up.
Councillor Newell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Professor Lee. You've certainly put it in context, saying that it would be detrimental to your entire career. And we get that, and I think we're all sort of learning very late in the piece about this. Just a slightly unrelated question, but we've obviously just seen the finding of the moa footprints in a similar vicinity. Is there any chance that there'd be some bigger critters down there?
Almost certainly, yes. Am I allowed to mention Hindenmar? Have I got another 2 or 3 minutes. The Hindenmar complex, which my research team has been working on for the past 7 or 8 years, is near Outram, so not really there. And this is unpublished work. The sediment there is totally different, a little tiny bit of diatomite, but it's mostly carbonaceous mudstone, very dark black stuff. We have got feathers there. And so we are expecting, when we have funding to do more research there, that we will find the animal that the feathers came off. At all the Mars that have been investigated in Germany, they have found entire animals with their feathers and scales and whatever preserved. The animals that we had in New Zealand are most likely to have been birds, but lizards and bats and who knows, so what I would like is a whole moa with its feathers on, not just some footprints.
Shoot for the stars.
What was that?
Shoot for the stars.
Yeah, might as well. Why
Bless
not?
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Professor Lee. Just a question around discovery, I suppose, and how local Runaka or local iwi are involved in the discovery process. I mean, obviously you don't know what you're going to find until you find it, but can we get some reassurance that they're actively involved in how this works?
Not yet, but I have been in communication with them because some of them were taken by one of the people from the mining company up and shown around, and I got a phone call very soon afterwards saying, I'm not sure that I like what I heard at the meeting up there. Can we talk about this? So certainly that would be something that would be taken on board. Can I say that the site was first discovered in 1875, or known about in 1875. No mining went on until the 1950s when they were going to use it as, I think, is it called pozzolan, for cement for either the Waitaki or the Roxburgh dams. So there were little pits there since the 1950s, but then nothing happened there until I went a few times as a student with my professor when I was, an undergraduate and so on. But research didn't actually get underway until the 1990s, and then in a more organised fashion in 2003. And we have always put in a request to the university has its own Maori consultation about, what they would like to hear from the research. So, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Professor Lee, thank you very much. It did turn into a 50-minute lecture,
Yeah.
didn't it?
It just shows you.
Well done. Thank you very much. Okay, our last presentation for public forum is a quartet. Lisa Shin, Kane Mahala, Andrew Marshall and Tane McLean. Welcome. You're going to talk to us about crime prevention activities. The floor is yours.
First of all, we'd like to thank you for having us here today. My name is Andrew. I'm a student and member of ASIS. Along with me is Keanu, Tane, and Lisa.
Thank you for having us. We have a short PowerPoint slide to explain about our club and also our activities. So ASIS is an international group of university students from Church of God who act to solve practical problems. So if you see the next slide, so ASIS means Save the Earth from A to Z, and next slide, we carry out the SAVE movement. So S is for social service. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So social service, and next is awareness raising. Next is the victim relief. And E stands for environmental protection. So these activities are carried out according to the needs of where they are. So next slide, please. So just like today, us as members all over the world attend council meetings to introduce about our club and also our activities. So last year for our services, next slide, please. We were awarded by one of the top 4 environmental awards. We received the Green Apple Award. And next slide, please. So we also received the US President Volunteer Service Award, the most honorable award in the United States. And we were also selected to speak at the UN International Day for Tolerance about human rights. We have 2 proposals. One is the implementation of the UN SDGs, and the other is the crime reduction movement. Right. So actually in New Zealand, we carried out crime reduction movement. So like regarding to the Christchurch terror, so hearing the actual original target of the Christchurch terror, we once again felt that crime isn't someone else's business, but we are all exposed to crime in our daily lives. So according to the broken window experiment, antisocial behavior and also like civil disorder creates an urban environment to encourage more serious crimes. So what happened in New York in the 1980s is that there was more than 600,000 crimes every year. So in order to reduce these crimes, they started to remove graffitis in subways. So even though removing graffiti wasn't such a big, wasn't too difficult, so it reduced crime rates dramatically. So it was dropped by 50% after 2 years, and by 75% after the 1990s. So we believe improving trivial matters, we are able to reduce the crime rate. So even though cleanups are very simple, picking up rubbish, we believe it makes a better and cleaner environment, which will also reduce crime.
So last month, the ASIS members from Dunedin, we travelled to Christchurch and carried out a crime prevention cleanup campaign alongside Christchurch members at a park in Christchurch. We were also able to receive support from Alexandra Davids from Keep Christchurch Beautiful and also the Christchurch City Council. And earlier this month, we held another crime prevention cleanup event here in Dunedin around the university campus from North Ground, which is Alhambra Union, until Clyde Street, where the mosque is. So during this time, our recognition was also in the ODT for our good deeds. And we're also able to receive support from local businesses and supermarkets. We'd also like to take this time to give thanks to the Mayor, Dave Cole, who was able to sign our agreement for Reduce Crime Together actually last year. So last year we were able to receive this support actually before a lot of terror happened in Christchurch. So last year we began crime prevention cleanup campaigns and movements. Also in Wellington, the ASIS members, they were able to receive a supporting letter from the Mayor, Justin Lester. After they received this supporting letter, they are able to have greater support within the community, encouraging more students to go forward and do cleanup campaigns and activities. So we're here today because we would kindly like to ask the Mayor also for a supporting letter, recognising the work that we're trying to do within the community, trying to encourage more young students also to come forward and do some active events, reducing crime together. Yeah, so thank you very much for having us and allowing us to talk today.
Yes. Anyone have any questions, councillors? Councillor Gary.
Your Worship, thank you for coming along to speak to us. I just wanted to know how you work in with the likes of Unicrew, who does similar kinds of volunteer work.
So as we've just a student group at the moment, we've just still in the beginning phases. So we're looking towards also partnering with Unicrew, seeing what work we can do together.
So you're looking to coordinate with them. Excellent. Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you. Can I suggest that you make time to come and see me and we'll talk about your letter of support. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Just before we go, we'd like to extend our gratitude for allowing us to come here to speak with you. So, 1, 2, 3. We love you, we love you, we love you. Wow. Thank you.
Okay, that is that's the conclusion of public forum, councillors. So we'll move on to the substantive part of the